Good morning. It seems I'm thinking about this particular presentation to you on a more constant basis. That's a good thing. Could be a great challenge to me. I'm also posting this particular item, set up a web page at Dr. Dr. Waters Sr., DrDLWatersSR.com. Set that up so that I have a background there of the one of the temples when I went to Egypt in 2005. Went there with my dissertation chair, my friend Dr. Kane Hopefelder. I saw where someone actually presented a item on Facebook where they talked about his book called Troubling Biblical Waters. I made mention of the fact that I read that book 8 times, at least 8 times, prior to ever meeting Dr. Kane Hopefelder. That book was one of the reasons that, according to the law of attraction, that I ended up being Dr. Kane Hopefelder's graduate assistant. It was one of the reasons that he became my dissertation chair, my teacher, one of the persons that I just simply admired immensely, was because I resonated at the frequency of Dr. Felder. The book that he wrote looked at the cognates of the biblical languages, Hebrew and Greek, and looked at the cognates of the biblical languages to find the African presence in those words that were used. There's often the discussion of whether or not people of African descent are found in the Bible. People of African descent are found in the Bible. But individuals who actually study the Bible, beyond criticizing the Bible, who actually study the Bible, they know that Africans are all over the Bible. You must consider where the Hebrew people were. You must consider where they were before they were even the Hebrew people. Where they were before they were considered a people, even where they were. The Bible itself says that out of Egypt have I called my son. Out of Egypt have I called my son. And people may be confused if they have not read as to where Egypt actually is, but it's on the continent of Africa. Egypt is a country. Africa is a continent. There's a difference between the two. And to become informed and educated, again, was one of the things that I was seeking, and I needed to read that book that many times before I even had the opportunity to meet Dr. Felder, so that I would be able to have a decent conversation with him in regard to his level of understanding about life. And of course, as I said, I became his graduate assistant. He was my dissertation chair. Just a giant of an individual. I know, and I'm willing to accept with anybody, that individuals, including myself, have things that people can look at, and they may have concerns about who we are and what we do and all of that. But I have learned that when we look deeper, we can find the God self in every individual. We can find the God self in every individual because we're all made in God's image. And that's, again, part of this journey of self-awareness, because if you ever find the God self in yourself, then it's far easier to find the God self in every other individual, because when you discover the self, you recognize there's only one self. And when you discover the self in you, you will see the self in everybody else. You will see the self because there's only one self. God said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one." And you will get beyond this aspect of all these other things that go on, because these people are actually functioning on a different level. They're functioning in a different dimension than what is being talked about here. They're functioning on a different dimension than what is being talked about here. Mine is a totally different approach to so many challenges that people may have in life. But each person must choose his or her own approach to the challenges that life offers. That's why one of the mystics of old, a fellow named Neville Goddard, put this way. He says, consciousness is the only reality. Consciousness is the only reality. And my paraphrase of that is, only those who see. You can only see through your own eyes. And I don't mean your physical EYEI eyes. I mean your eye, the letter I, the eye that you are. You can only see through your own eye. But when that I is God, when that I stands for God, when you say I am, and that stands for God, that I, then you can see all things, because that I is God, that I is divine, that I is impersonal, and therefore you can see all, because God is omnipresence. God is omniscient. God is omnipotency. And you begin to understand what it means. Now, there's a growth process, a growth of understanding, a growth of appreciation, a growth of awareness that takes place. But once the seed is planted, it will grow. It will grow. And so this is what we're talking about in regard to this. If you allow it to grow, that is, if you allow it to grow. And again, I didn't say that. Emerson says that. Emerson says that in his book, in his essay, call it History. And you can look at a number of essays in regard to Emerson. Emerson essay, if you want to look at the Divinity School Address, which is a very powerful address, his address essay called The Oversoul, again, he's talking, and a number of them. And of course, History, as I have mentioned previously. These are all things. Emerson grew in his understanding of God. He grew in his understanding of God. And there are so many other correspondences that to me have been beneficial. My own journey, as I said, I become a minister and I grow, I'm benefited. And part of the reason that I became a minister was that my job history is that I had gone to the military. And when I came out, I initially worked. I initially worked inside of a cotton mill in my hometown, and went to school, cotton mill at night, and then went to school during the day. And so that was my process that I was working with. And of course, I spent a great deal of time sleeping in school. And then later, I got married and moved into the Washington metropolitan area. And the first job that I found that was actually a job was also working as an electrician apprentice, pretty much, or just really a laborer before I even became an electrician apprentice, and worked for that job for a period of time. And one of the things that happened in that job, which was phenomenal for me, was, people had various attitudes in regard to that. Individuals who were electricians normally became electricians after a 6-year apprenticeship, at the time that I was working in that particular job. And the job that I worked, now it may seem crazy in regard to this day and time that we're living, but at that time I needed to work. And the job that I initially got paid me, if I remember correctly, it was a salary. At the end, I don't remember what it was at the beginning, but it paid $140 a week. $140 a week for 40 hours of work, whatever that calculates as far as the payment is concerned on an hourly basis. But that was my salary. That was my salary. And I worked that job. I worked it because I was married. We were expecting a baby, and I worked that job. That was my work. The thing that happened on that job that was significant for me was that one of the individuals, with his particular attitude about life and the relationship between the different races and people, one of the individuals on that job actually got what we call caught in an electric box. This is a significant thing, which means that he could have been killed, electrocuted right there that day. And I saw him, and we are trained that when someone is caught that way, that the best thing for you to do is actually take up a board and hit that person and knock them off. But I did not have time to actually knock that individual off. I grabbed that person with my hands and pulled that person off that box, pulled him out of that box, saved his life, literally saved his life at that time. It was instantaneous. It happened just like that. And I pulled that person off that box. That person was the son of the owner of the company at that time, and he is actually the owner of the company now. He is the owner of the company now. But pulled that individual off of that box. And then I thought about what I had done. And then, having conversations with individuals later, one of my friends who has since passed, Big Mike, as we called him, later said, he's like, why you pull that person off that box? Why you do that? But we went through our changes, but pull that person off that box. Later, I worked for a company at the time was called CMP, and then Bell Atlantic, and eventually became what is now today Verizon. Now, the thing that happened with Verizon, this is my journey. Now, listen to my journey. The thing that happened with my Verizon is that I took a test. I went into a store, a recruitment location there in Alexandria, Virginia, and I went in the afternoon after work, and I took a test, and there was a lady there, and she gave me one test, and I took that test. She gave me another test, and I took that test. She gave me another test, and I took that test. And then she asked me to wait. And I sat there and waited. And when she came out, she said, I want to offer you a job. I had looked at the brochures on that paper that they had on the table, the set of brochures. The least paying job that they had on that paper paid for a week of work $160. It was $20 more than I was making. I did not know what the work was other than looking at the item. But the least expensive job there was $160 per week. I said to her before I even knew what job it was, I'll take it. And that's what she said. You don't know what job I'm offering you. But she offered to me the highly paying job on that item. Now here's the part that I want you to remember. It was what was called, I believe, a communications representative. It concerned business sales. And that job involved going for a role play. And it paid a significant amount of money. When I went for that role play, they gave me a book, and I was supposed to study that book, I think, for an hour, and then go in and sell something to 3 people, I believe. I'd never done anything like it in my life. The only thing that I can remember that I had sold, really, was that I had sold grit newspapers for a period of time. The only thing. But here I was with an opportunity to do that. What did I do? I did well for the first few minutes until the person asked me a question about something that he said was in the book. And it dawned on me that this person knew what was in the book that I had. And I spent the rest of that interview looking inside the book that I had. Of course, I did not pass that. But then they offered me a job doing what they call customer relations, which was inside of a building and talking to people on the phone. You know those. And I did that for about a year and a half, I think. And I was really good at that. I won awards. I got trips to go to various places. I was really good at that. And eventually, I was promoted to the job that I was offered at the beginning. It was in the midst of that, doing that particular job, customer representative, where you go out and talk to customers. I was located at that point when I had gotten that job and stayed in it for a period of time, that I was ready to work for what was then Bell Atlantic for the rest of my life. Prior to getting those jobs, all of them, I had sensed a call, as we call it. And the hero's journey is called a call to adventure. In transformative learning theory, it's called a disorienting dilemma or disorienting event. My theory, the 8 days of transformation, is called an awareness. For me, it was a dream. Prior to any of those jobs, I had an awareness of this call to ministry, wherein I had had that conversation with my uncle. When I was at the top that I knew, the pinnacle that I knew, I was making really, really good money. My family was doing well. I said, I need to check out this call and see if indeed it is a call from God. And I made a covenant with God at that time, just like covenants that you find in the Bible. At that time, I said to Spirit, I have certain conditions that if you meet them, then I know they are of God. I know the call is of God. I was attending a church or a spiritual center. I had a group of people who were loving on me. One lady in particular, Miss Sanders, Sister Sanders, gave me opportunity after opportunity to express my gift of teaching. I celebrated her. She was just a wonderful, whatever others may say about her or said about her, she was wonderful to me. And then I gave God a year, and I said that things go right, and I was going to school, I had sent in my papers, I had been accepted, all of those things. And I gave God a year because I had, at that point, a wife and 3 children, and we were going to pull up stakes and go to school. And what occurred was that I asked God that I would have $2,000 at the end of that year between when I said yes and when I went to school. During that period of time, I had an accident with my car, and the person that was in fault had no insurance, so I had to pay out of my pocket. And there were a number of other things that occurred. And long story short, at the end of that time, I had $600 on the day that I was scheduled to leave and go down to school, as I call it. $600. Now, here is the thing. How do you know God shows up? How do you know it's God? I had $600. We had $600. And then we went to the church that day, and we were supposed to say goodbye to all our friends. And we did. We had a celebration, a party. And we all cried. We were leaving. We had already sent our children ahead. And then the church gathered and gave us $800, a significant amount of money. But now we had $1,400. And you know, I'm having this conversation with God, but I'm too deep in to turn around. I've made this covenant, and I'm believing God. Sister Sanders, the lady that I mentioned, who is deceased now, transitioned now, gave me an envelope. And she said, do not open this envelope until you get all the way to the school. Don't open it until you get all the way to the school. The school was, let's say about 500 miles away, maybe, something like that. I don't remember exactly the distance, but it was 500 miles. And plus we were going to stop and then see our families and then travel on to school with our children. I traveled maybe 100 miles away. And I opened that envelope at that time. And inside that envelope, if you were guessing, there was exactly $600 in the form of a check. I had exactly $2,000. Exactly $2,000. God had kept, as far as I was concerned, the covenant. Not only his side of the covenant of blessing me, but my side of the covenant of coming up with $2,000. The inner journey of self-awareness to become your authentic self. That's just part of the journey that I have taken. Over and over and over again, I've seen Spirit, manifest Spirit, demonstrate Spirit, express Spirit through me in significant ways, as me in significant ways, over and over and over again. And as we go through this, I can do the theory of this because at this point I've studied it enough to actually understand what the theory is on so many realms, because I wanted to understand this myself, especially when you're talking to individuals and encouraging them to understand that consciousness is the only reality. When I had a conversation yesterday, as a matter of fact, and what brings me back here is that you can change your circumstance beginning now by doing some things. The first thing is thinking. There are books that are written. You can find them anywhere. One of the books I read in 2009, after I had seen the item called The Secret, which deals with the law of attraction, the idea that we are vibrating at a particular level. And that might be a place where you want to start. And if you send me at info@iwillrestore.com or send me at admin@drdlwaters, WATERS, senior.com, and send me an email, I will send you some material. But one of the books that we recommend that people read is As a Man Thinketh, or if you change that and make it gender, you can say As a Woman Thinketh. But it's a phenomenal book because what it says is that the power is within the individual. The power is within the individual. So it's not an idea that I just came up with. No, this can be found in the books that come out of ancient Egypt, which they call the Book of the Dead, but it's actually the Book of Enlightenment. The idea of the Book of the Dead was so that you would not actually study it and see it, but it has been translated from the Egyptian. You can find it, you may even be able to find it as a Book of Thoth, Thoth, I believe, or the Book of Anu, Anu. All of those, you can search and find this material. The thing is that I recommend to individuals that they find a coach, a mentor, someone. The hero's journey have mentors. Yoda was a mentor to Luke Skywalker. Obi-Wan Kenobi was a mentor to Luke Skywalker. Same kind of idea. But you can do it all on your own if you like. I think the journey will be longer, but that's your choice. That's your choice. There are some people that need to do it all on their own. Books, again. As a Man Thinketh, the Hero's Journey is a book that you can also get, of course, in regard to this. And then there are other books that will help you, but you got to read the book. And then beyond reading, you actually have to practice the book and go through the process. And another thing that's vital in regard to this particular journey is the aspect of having a community, what the Bible calls the oikos that is around you. And that's a community that accepts you, that loves you, that you feel a part of, that you can grow in the midst of. And that's a vital part. And I'm not talking about a church community, because some churches are just not the community that you need in regard to growing the way that I'm talking about growing. And you know that, and I know that. And so what you need is a community. Community can be one person, it can be two persons. Wherever two or three gather together in my name, there am I in the midst. That's what the text says. What it means is that when there are two or three individuals that are gathered together, there is another mind that is recognized as being present. There's another mind that is recognized as being present. That mind is the same self that we've been talking about. And now there's even more power that is present in that community. And so no matter how big the community may be, there should be a part when it becomes a common one. It becomes one. It becomes one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. And so this whole aspect, whether it's a family, whether it's a group, whether it's a church, whether it's a nation, it does not matter. It becomes one. And so that a challenge for whatever it may be. And the hero's journey, how does a group become one? Is when one individual actually takes the journey of self-awareness to become the authentic self. That's how organizations become one. That's how churches become one. That's how any group becomes one. That's how that takes place. And so that whole process in regard to that. And so books can help. But the process itself is generic. It invites any. And why do you want one person to do it? Because again, when a person goes through it on their own, there's a whole process that they go through, and they gain experience. They gain awareness. They gain this whole thing where they understand the whole process. You can see this in the Iliad and the Odyssey, wherein the individual goes through it. And there are just some things that Odysseus or Ulysses experiences by him or herself. And then they are able to actually share with others what is going on in regard to that. And so, again, all of these things are necessary. And you will see this. So there is consciousness. You can go through thinking. You can go through feeling. You can feel your way. And you remember they said, fake it till you make it. What they mean is act like you already are what you desire to be, and soon you will be what you act like. Act like what you dream of being. Fake it until you make it real. And that doesn't mean just pretend. It means that you take on the characteristics, the movement, the body posture, and all of those things of what you desire to be. Now, you still are developing the skills, the talents, the gifts, and all of those things, but you are acting like this is who you are. So that becomes important too. Because once you start moving on one realm, whether it's talking, and that would be affirmations or self-talk, not just talking and speaking like to other people, but also the self-talk that gets inside of you, where you're changing your consciousness, your subjective mind is being trained. And so it's your objective mind that is being informed by your talking. Let the weak say, I am strong. Let the weak say I'm strong. But if you just move that to another level, you'll say, let the poor say I am rich. Let the poor say I'm rich. Or in other words, never say I don't have. And so let the poor say I am rich. And so you go through that process. So you're talking, and then you are seeing different. That's using your imagination. And you begin to process in your mind that I am or what I desire to be. So you see yourself as. You put a picture. You can go to a person called Maxwell Maltz and look at psycho-cybernetics. That's a very powerful thing, where he talks about this aspect almost like a tractor beam that's drawing you toward your dream. And he has a whole process. Again, we teach a whole thing in regard to that as well. All of these tools are available to you. All of them. Rather than sit around and blame anything or anybody, whether it's your nature, your DNA, and you think that you got what you got because of what grandmama did and what mama did and what daddy did or grandpapa did or whatever it may be in your genes. It does not matter. Or whether it's nurture, it's the way you grew up. It does not matter in regard to that. What matters is what's inside of you. That's what matters. What's inside of you. And you, I, get to determine, no matter what abuse has taken place in our, we get to determine, if we will, what our life will be. That's what the inner journey is, more than just being entertained by movies or television shows or real live this and all this other kind of stuff. It's more than that. Those are the people we're talking to. The question is, are we talking to you? Blessings. Take care.